It started on a Sunday, a gray, wet March morning in Portland, the kind where the world outside the window looked half-finished. Claire Bennett rolled out of bed, expecting the smell of coffee and the gentle clatter of her husband cooking eggs, his version of domestic bliss. But the house was quiet. Too quiet. She blinked the sleep from her eyes as she padded into the kitchen barefoot, yawning. That's when she saw it. A sticky note, crookedly taped to the fridge. "Goodbye. Never loved you anyway." That was it. No signature, no explanation, just that cruel little line, like a slap delivered with surgical precision. Claire stood frozen, eyes locked on the handwriting she knew as well as her own. Her breath caught, but she didn't cry, not even a gasp, not because it didn't hurt, but because something deeper stirred, a sense she hadn't felt in years, one that had nothing to do with marriage, pattern recognition. She didn't know it yet, but this wasn't just a breakup. It was the beginning of a case, and this time the criminal was her husband. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Bank of Cascadia. Alert, overdraft attempt, $9,800 at 6:43 a.m. Then another. Transaction declined, suspected fraud, emergency freeze initiated. Claire's lip curled, not in fear, in something colder, calculating. "You really thought you could get away with this," she whispered. She crossed the kitchen, opened her laptop, and entered a 24-character code that unlocked her personal firewall dashboard. Each transaction, every account tied to their shared portfolio, lit up in a grid across her screen. Red dots marked failed attempts, orange meant alerts in progress. Ethan had been busy, but Claire had been busier. He just didn't know it yet. She sat down slowly, letting the moment settle. For 8 years she'd played the role, the dutiful wife, the caring partner, the one who smiled through work dinners, laughed at his stupid podcast ideas, trusted him to manage their investments, even if she quietly triple-checked the numbers afterward. He made omelets. She made trust look effortless. And now? He thought a note would be enough to dismantle everything? Claire was 38, a lead investigator at the Federal Cybercrime Task Force. She'd tracked Nigerian romance rings, dismantled Bitcoin laundering schemes through Eastern Europe, and hunted down identity thieves so good they made IRS agents look like interns. And Ethan, her Ethan, just became her next case file. Flashbacks came uninvited. 3 months ago, he'd started asking weird questions. "Hey babe, which platform do we use for the 401k again? You ever thought about moving stuff to offshore accounts? Just to diversify?" She'd brushed it off then. Curious husband talk. And then there was that week in Tahoe. His iPad went missing. "Left it at the airport," he'd mumbled. There'd been late-night calls from work, bills he said he'd paid but hadn't, receipts in the trash from hotels she'd never heard of. A line she once heard at a conference echoed in her head. "The best con artists don't hide, they blend." Ethan hadn't been hiding. He'd been preparing. Claire opened a drawer in her home office. Inside was a simple folder labeled in Sharpie, "Red Case, Emergency Protocol." She never thought she'd use it for her own life. Inside was a checklist. Emergency freeze on joint accounts, alert credit bureaus, trigger honeypot monitoring system, lock all passwords, notify internal contact for backtrace coverage. She executed them all with surgical precision. Within 30 minutes, Ethan's access to anything, joint funds, portfolio accounts, even the HBO subscription, was gone. And still, she didn't call anyone. No police report, no agency alert, because Claire didn't need backup. Not yet. It wasn't until she opened her encrypted backup drive that she found the first real clue. A cloud sync glitch had auto-forwarded a series of Ethan's emails to her archive months ago. One subject line stood out. "Transfer confirmed, offshore AC for Mitchell & Company, Cayman." She clicked. The PDF opened. Bank logs, authorization codes, a list of wire transactions she hadn't signed, and her name was all over it. Claire Bennett, CFO, Horizon Syndicate Fund. She let out a long, low breath, closed her laptop. He wasn't just running, he was building something, and he was doing it in her name. The rain outside intensified, slapping against the windows as if punctuating her thoughts. Claire moved back into the kitchen, poured herself a black coffee, and returned to the sticky note. She stared at it for a long time, then calmly took it down and slid it into a plastic evidence bag. Then she whispered, "You left me a note. I'm leaving you a federal case." Claire didn't sleep that night, not because of heartbreak, but because her brain was on fire. Her living room looked like the war room from her bureau days, laptop wide open on the coffee table, a second monitor hooked up on the floor, and 2 burner phones buzzing with encrypted scans. A half-empty cup of cold coffee sat beside a growing stack of evidence folders, each one more damning than the last. The Post-it note from from Damien, now lived inside a clear plastic sleeve pinned to her corkboard above the couch, right next to a printed screenshot of the transfer email to Mitchell & Company, Cayman. He had tried to erase her with one line, but all he'd done was flip a switch, because Claire wasn't grieving, she was hunting. And this time, the prey wasn't some anonymous hacker on a dark web thread. It was her husband. Her eyes scanned through lines of metadata like a machine. She cross-referenced every account they'd ever opened together, every email he'd CC'd her on, every strange credit inquiry in the past 12 months. Slowly, the lies started surfacing like bodies in a flood. There was an Eric Matthews registered in Seattle with a fake address that hadn't existed since 2012. Multiple Venmo payments to a Lola Devine, tagged as consulting, but linked to a burner phone, one he forgot to wipe clean before disappearing. A Dropbox folder labeled Horizon Wealth Syndicate. Claire opened it and froze. Inside was a full pitch deck for a startup fund, built in Canva, polished and professional. But what stopped her wasn't the graphics. It was the executive team section. CFO, Claire Bennett, her name, her headshot, her career achievements, all lifted from her LinkedIn and slightly rewritten to sound edgier. Damien, wasn't just stealing money. He was building a con with her identity as the linchpin. Her stomach flipped, not from fear, but from rage. How long had he been planning this? How many layers deep was this scam? She thought back to the gala where they met, a cybersecurity fundraiser at the Portland Museum of Art. He'd been in a tailored navy suit, all charm and confidence. "Claire Bennett, right? You cracked that healthcare breach in Denver. Impressive." She remembered blushing at the compliment. "Only on women who can outsmart me," he'd added, smiling. At the time, she'd taken it as flirting. Now she saw it for what it was, a scout identifying his next mark. At 9:23 a.m., Claire knocked on the side entrance of the forensics wing of the FBI Portland field office. Tyler Grayson opened the door with a confused look. She trusted him more than anyone in the building. They'd worked dozens of ops together, and he was smart enough to ask no questions, until he had to. "You okay?" he asked, eyes scanning her face. "I have a case," Claire said, "and I need a trace run. Quietly." "Who's the subject?" She paused. Then, "My husband." Tyler's face didn't move for a beat. Then he nodded slowly. "Let's sit down." They sat in a secure room, Claire handing over encrypted files, burner phones, and a list of suspicious accounts. They worked in silence for 40 minutes. Claire watched Tyler's fingers fly over the keyboard as he peeled back layers of aliases, VPN routes, and dummy LLCs. Then he stopped, his face drained of color. "Claire, he's not just some sleazy husband. He's a ghost." "What do you mean?" Tyler spun his screen. "His identity is a patchwork. 6 known aliases, 4 states, same MO. He targets women in law enforcement, finance, or cybersecurity, gains trust, drains them, disappears." Claire leaned in closer. There, among the archived images, were photos of other women. Victims. All professionals. All high earners. One photo made her heart stop. "Naomi Carter." She whispered the name like a prayer. She hadn't heard it in years. They trained together at Quantico, and now Naomi was a face on a digital hit list. That night, Claire paced her kitchen before finally dialing Naomi's number. "Claire? Wow, it's been forever." "Naomi, listen carefully. Did you know a man named Mark Rivers?" There was silence, then a sharp intake of breath. "Oh my God, you too?" Naomi explained everything. How Mark had convinced her to invest $300,000 from her family's estate into a crypto hedge fund. How he vanished with it all. How she'd filed charges, but he'd disappeared before the case gained traction. "I thought I was just stupid. I didn't think..." I didn't think he'd do it again." "He didn't just do it again," Claire said. "He's doing it bigger, and he's using my credentials." There was another long silence. "What do we do?" Naomi asked. Claire's voice dropped to a deadly calm. "We don't chase him. We corner him, and then we burn it all down." 3 days passed. Claire didn't leave her apartment except to go to the bureau. On the 4th morning, she received a private message on her burner. "Still think you're the smart one? You always loved control, but guess what? I've had it the whole time. E." Claire exhaled slowly. She typed back, "Keep talking, Damien. Every word is evidence. You're not outsmarting me, you're feeding me proof." Minutes later, her laptop pinged, an attempted remote login. Location: Caracas, Venezuela. Damien was trying to access their frozen investment account. But what he didn't know was that Claire had installed a forensic honeypot system, custom-built to track every keystroke, every server hop, every digital breadcrumb. He thought he was in control. He was already inside the cage. That night, Tyler called back. "I've got a name." Claire sat up straighter. "His real one?" Tyler hesitated, then sent over the file. Interpol case file. Assistance request. Active warrant. The name at the top, Damien Cole. "Claire, he's wanted in the US, the UK, and Australia. Wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. At least a dozen aliases, a dozen broken lives." Claire's eyes stayed fixed on the screen. "Ethan? Mark? Damien? Whatever name you go by, you just declared war on the wrong woman." For the past week, Claire Bennett lived like a double agent in her own life. By day, she sat in her bureau office reviewing cyber insurance claims and teaching rookies how to spot crypto laundering schemes. Her expression was calm, her tone even. Nothing about her demeanor gave away that her life had become the center of an international fraud operation. By night, she was in full predator mode. Every device in her apartment had been repurposed. Her second monitor now displayed 3 live dashboards, tracking offshore logins, email pings, and unauthorized attempts to breach their joint account firewall. A whiteboard leaned against the kitchen counter, filled with call patterns and suspicious contacts linked to Damien's aliases. She hadn't just locked down her accounts, she'd turned them into bait. Her target thought he was running a con, but he was walking through a digital minefield. "If he wants to get close again," she murmured into her coffee mug one night, eyes bloodshot, "he'll have to walk through fire and think it's a red carpet." The first step in Claire's counterattack came on a Tuesday evening. She sat across from Tyler in a secure conference room, the room humming with encrypted data streams and background chatter from analysts working on unrelated cases. The two of them were alone. "We need to give him something he can't resist," Claire said. "You're thinking bait?" She nodded. "There's an old offshore account I haven't touched since I was in grad school. It's got $145K sitting in it. What if we make it look vulnerable? Like I forgot to move it?" Tyler blinked, then grinned. "You want to wave the cheese in front of the rat." "Exactly, but we hide the trap in the cheese." They named the operation internally Project Horizon Trap. Claire built a dummy dashboard interface, exposing just enough vulnerability to be enticing but not suspicious. The metadata would suggest it was real. The money was real. But every login attempt would be mirrored, recorded, traced in real time. What Damien didn't know, what he couldn't possibly suspect, was that the woman he once kissed goodnight had already drafted an FBI asset seizure order in case he bit. And when he bit, he'd swallow the hook down to his spine. Later that night, someone knocked on Claire's door. She opened it cautiously, stunned to see a face she hadn't expected. Harper Lynn, a defense attorney Claire had gone head-to-head with in court more than once. Brilliant, ruthless, not the kind to show up unannounced, especially not with circles under her eyes and a folder clutched like a lifeline. "Claire, I need to talk." Claire stepped aside without a word. "My new client?" Harper continued. "He said his name was Eric Matthews. Gave me investment docs. Told me you were involved, that you were backing his company." "Horizon Wealth Syndicate?" Claire asked dryly. Harper's eyes widened. "You know?" "He's my husband." Harper sat down hard at the kitchen table. "Jesus Christ." She opened the folder. Inside were investment packets, emails, and PDFs that mirrored the ones Claire had found earlier, only this time they'd gone out to actual clients, investors, people who believed Claire, FBI cybercrime investigator Claire, was a part of this shady new firm. At the bottom of the packet was a scanned signature, Claire's, forged, perfectly. "He's using me as bait," Claire whispered, "but not for money alone, for access. My name opens doors. He's building a network using my credibility." 3 days later, Naomi flew to Portland. The three women, Claire, Naomi, and Harper, sat together at Claire's dining table, surrounded by printouts, laptops, coffee cups, and more takeout containers than any of them wanted to count. They called themselves the Triad, half joke, half battle cry. Naomi had screenshots of a now-defunct crypto wallet Damien had used years ago, wallets now echoing patterns in his recent movements. Harper had access to client databases and investor threads, all of which Damien had poisoned with lies under Claire's name. Claire had the surveillance system, the forensic data, and the fire. "We don't just stop him," Claire said one night, voice steely. "We expose him, we bankrupt him, and we make sure the next woman never sees him as charming again." It happened at 2:41 a.m. on a Friday morning. Claire's eyes popped open as her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unauthorized login attempt. Account: Horizon Offshore. Origin: Lisbon, Portugal. But that wasn't the alarming part. A second alert followed immediately. Breach detected. Encrypted FBI folder, level 3, access attempt. Her heart stopped. Damien wasn't just after the money anymore. He was coming after her work files, the ones stored in a classified directory linked to ongoing FBI investigations. Files she'd buried behind 3 layers of access and 2 honeypots. He wasn't running. He was fighting back. And he had help. By 9 a.m., Tyler was in Claire's kitchen again, his laptop on her counter as they scanned packet trails. "He's bouncing the signal through Europe and California, but the exit node, that's not random." "What do you mean?" Tyler turned his screen. "Endpoint is traced to a workstation in Fresno, California. The username is Isa Kane 07. Claire froze. "Isabella Kane?" Tyler nodded grimly. "Didn't you work with her at the Bureau?" Claire sat back in her chair. Isabella Kane had been one of the best cyber agents in the West Coast unit until she vanished 3 years ago under suspicion of leaking internal data. The files were never recovered. She disappeared like smoke. And now she was back, working with Damien. "This isn't just personal anymore," Claire whispered. "This is strategic. He's building something, and she's helping him." That night, Claire's encrypted line buzzed once. She answered. "You've made your move," she said, voice ice. "Hope it was worth it." Damien's voice came through, smooth as silk. "Claire, I didn't just want your money. I wanted your reputation, your access, your network." He paused. "You made yourself the bait, but I made you the crime." Click. The line went dead. Claire didn't move, didn't breathe. She just stared out the window, the lights of downtown Portland flickering in the distance. Then she whispered, "Then I guess it's time to burn the whole web down." Claire Bennett had been chasing ghosts her whole career, but this time she wasn't chasing one. She was facing one. In a secured conference room at the FBI's Portland division, Claire stood in front of a digital spiderweb that would terrify most seasoned agents. The screen behind her mapped the flow of over $18 million through 5 shell corporations, each branching out to foreign tax havens, digital wallets, and front-facing consulting firms scattered across Europe and Asia. At the center of the web, Damien Cole. And right beside him, Isabella Kane, former cybercrime specialist, current rogue operative. Claire turned to the room of agents and analysts. "This isn't just a con job. This is digital warfare built with charm and credentials. He's using my name to sell access, my career to buy silence. He made this personal, and I intend to make it professional." No one in the room dared look away. Special Agent Reed Morrison, her old supervisor, stepped forward. "We've never had a case where an agent actively leads a federal sting involving her own spouse. But if anyone's equipped to pull this off, it's you." Claire met his eyes squarely. "I'm going to need full surveillance clearance, remote asset tracking authority, and unrestricted access to Interpol's liaison network." "Done," Morrison said without hesitation. Back in her apartment, Claire sat on her balcony staring at the Willamette River, trying to calm her racing mind. Naomi texted from San Diego. Naomi, found something weird in an old blockchain trail. Need to call. Claire called instantly. You said you tracked one of Damien's old crypto wallets? Yes, I decrypted a recovery file we'd ignored before, and I found a back door. Claire frowned. Meaning? Meaning someone coded an access route from the inside. From someone with your credentials. The author tag reads, C. Bennett Alpha. Claire's stomach dropped. Damien hadn't just framed her, he was becoming her. The tech infrastructure he was building wasn't random. It was modeled after her systems, her processes, her voice. He doesn't want to ruin me, she whispered. He wants to wear my skin. The next morning, Claire met Tyler and Agent Morrison at a temporary field station near the airport. There they launched Operation Firewall, a full-scale sting built to bait Damien into a fatal misstep. They leaked news of a new hedge fund backed by a powerful but anonymous federal contact, complete with a fake press release, fake email chains, and a landing page designed by Claire herself to mimic a confidential insider leak. The page was laced with tracking scripts, biometric fingerprinting, and keyloggers hidden under a standard KYC form. Within 48 hours, Damien bit. A digital wallet pushed $120,000 into the fake hedge fund from an account tagged as E. Matthews in VMGMT. Claire watched the transaction populate in real time. That's a traceable asset, Tyler said. Pinged through Spain. He zoomed in. A red dot blinked on the map. Barcelona, a rented apartment in the Gothic Quarter. Claire exhaled. Pack your bags, I'm going to Spain. She wasn't going alone. Harper Lynn surprised her at the staging area with a leather briefcase and a grim smile. You'll need someone to issue a civil asset freeze. Besides, I'd like to look the bastard in the eye. Claire nodded. They arrived in Barcelona with Morrison and an Interpol rep, set up shop in a hotel across from Damien's rental unit, and waited. The following evening, just before midnight, a woman entered the building. Security footage showed her face clearly. Isabella Kane. She's delivering something, Morrison said. Claire shook her head. No, she's confirming an exit plan. He's about to disappear again. So what's the move? Claire pulled up her watch. We wait until he gets comfortable. At dawn, Damien exited the building wearing dark sunglasses and a smug expression. Claire tailed him to a quiet cafe near the Plaça de Catalunya, her nerves a live wire under her skin. He was already seated when she walked in. The moment their eyes met, it was like lightning hit steel. He stood slowly. Claire, he said softly, you came. Of course I did, she replied. Wouldn't miss watching you lose. He smiled. You always were dramatic. She sat across from him. Between them lay years of betrayal disguised as romance. This all could have ended differently, he said. You're right, Claire replied. You could have picked someone dumber. She pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Inside were signed court orders, asset freeze, arrest warrants, digital seizure protocols. Damien's face didn't move, but his hands curled. Just then, 2 FBI agents entered the cafe, followed by Spanish law enforcement. Game's over, Damien. But he didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned closer. You think I didn't plan for this? There's a failsafe. You'll lose your job before I lose my freedom. Claire's voice was ice. You mean the backup server you activated in Panama this morning? We cloned it hours ago. Data was pushed to 6 international agencies. You're not going viral. You're going to rot. Damien opened his mouth to speak, but the agents already had him cuffed. He looked smaller than she remembered. Weaker. Enjoy prison, she said, and pray Isabella doesn't flip first. As they walked out, a motorcycle screeched through the alley behind the cafe. Claire turned just in time to see Isabella toss something onto the sidewalk. It was a USB drive. Harper picked it up and plugged it into her portable scanner. The contents made her gasp. Claire, this isn't just about your name or the fund. Damien was infiltrating a federal retirement system, the one linked to our agency. Claire's heart slammed against her ribs. You mean this scam goes national? Claire stared out over the Barcelona skyline. Then this wasn't the end, she said quietly. It was the ignition. 3 weeks after Barcelona, Claire Bennett walked into the FBI Cyber Division headquarters in Quantico. Not as a betrayed wife, not even as an agent out for justice, but as the lead federal consultant on a multi-agency investigation now known internally as Operation Ghost Trail. It was surreal. In the span of a few months, she had gone from cooking Sunday breakfast with her husband to uncovering a criminal empire that stretched across continents. She stood at the front of the war room, her heels silent against the cold tile, as analysts flipped through dossiers marked classified and legal advisors reviewed asset forfeiture documents. At the center of every chart, every photo, every red thread connection was Damian Cole, once Ethan Bennett, once Mark Rivers, once her husband. Claire tapped her laser pointer against the display. "This is no longer about me," she said. "This is about how betrayal, when unchecked, becomes systemic. He was using my name to access government retirement systems. Yours, mine, everyone's. This stops now." Silence swept the room, not from fear, but awe. Claire had not only survived the storm, she had become the woman who would name it, track it, and dismantle it piece by piece. The trial of Damian Cole took place in a high-security federal court in Alexandria, Virginia. The room was packed. Victims from 5 countries flew in. Former investors, former lovers, former friends. Every single one carried a story, and every story led back to him. Claire sat in the front row, Harper Lynn to her left, Naomi Carter to her right. Damian entered the courtroom in a tailored gray suit, but the charisma was gone. The charm that once disarmed rooms now looked hollow. His smile was weak. His eyes darted from face to face but never met Claire's. The judge listed the charges. For multiple counts of wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit financial terrorism, and obstruction of justice. He paused, letting the silence land. This court sentences Damian Cole to 38 years in federal prison, without the possibility of parole. A murmur rippled through the room. Claire didn't cry. She didn't need to. Instead, she stood as they led him away. For a moment, their eyes met, and she saw it. Panic, confusion, disbelief. Damian had built his life on manipulating strong women, and it was those very women who had dismantled his empire. A week later, news broke that Isabella Cain had been captured in Buenos Aires, attempting to cross the border using a fake Canadian passport. Her plea deal was conditional. Full access to the Pandora Vault, an encrypted server that contained the darkest parts of Damian's operation. The contents were worse than anyone imagined. Harper, Claire, and Morrison sat side by side as the files poured in. Hundreds of video surveillance logs, hidden cameras, private moments, all used as leverage. Deepfake templates of financial leaders and politicians, ready to be exploited in future scams. Encrypted voice recordings of bribery deals, blackmail threats, and recruitment interviews. "He wasn't just building a scam," Harper murmured. "He was building an empire of psychological warfare." Claire clenched her jaw. "And now it's a pile of ashes." 6 months later, Claire stood barefoot on the balcony of her new apartment in Alexandria, the sun glinting off the Potomac River. She had sold her old house in Portland, burned the yellow Post-it note, thrown away the dishes they bought together. The last traces of Ethan were now pixels in a sealed evidence locker. But she hadn't left it all behind. She kept the fire. With Harper and Naomi, she launched a new agency, Women Behind Firewalls. It was a consulting firm for digital justice, partnering with the FBI and private clients to protect women targeted in cyber financial betrayal schemes. They didn't just track stolen money. They taught women how to never be prey again. "Our job," Claire said in an NPR interview, "is to turn survivors into protectors. We don't just help women recover. We help them fight back. We help them rise." One quiet Sunday evening, Claire received a letter, handwritten, no return address. Inside was a short note. "You never knew me, but I knew your name. The day I heard you were taking him down, I stopped blaming myself. Thank you." Rachel Clare sat on the floor, the letter pressed to her chest, breathing slowly. This was what justice looked like. Not rage, not revenge, but relief. Weeks later, Claire stood at a podium inside an FBI auditorium, facing a sea of rookie cyber agents. Behind her, a massive slide projected the title, Tracking Betrayal Through Code, the Ghost Trail Protocol. She didn't smile as she spoke. She told the truth. You're not just here to guard passwords. You're here to guard people. People like me, like Naomi, like Harper. The digital world is a battlefield, and con men, they don't wear ski masks. They wear smiles and suits. The room was silent, transfixed. Claire's voice remained steady. They'll make you feel crazy, isolated, small. But here's what they don't know. Every con leaves a trail. Every lie leaves a glitch. You just have to know how to look. And more importantly, you have to believe what you see. The agents rose for a standing ovation. Claire turned from the stage, feeling more powerful than ever. That night, Claire poured herself a glass of tea and stepped out onto the balcony again. The air was cool. The city below her hummed quietly. She leaned on the railing and smiled. She remembered the note on her old fridge. Goodbye. Never loved you anyway. It used to sting. Now it felt like a setup line. For a punchline she got to write. Because in the end, Damien hadn't destroyed her. He had forged her. He had turned her into something unstoppable. Sometimes, Claire whispered to the wind, the best revenge isn't just surviving, it's thriving, and making damn sure no other woman falls alone.